Welcome so much to Retire with Clarity with the managing partners of OpenAir Advisers, Stewart Fields, John Lawton. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. John, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Spike. Thanks for having us.
Stuart and yourself, you ready to go for today's program?
Yes, sir. I'm here, ready to go.
Well,
Awesome.
I understand that you two have teed up a great show. Thank you for letting me be a part of your program today. We're going to get a lot of information out of it. I understand that we're going to be doing income and tax planning. Can we make taxes exciting today?
I think we can. I think we can, Spike.
Never a dull moment when we're talking about taxes.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, I'm going to go. One of the myth busters I would like to go through right away is that I think a lot of people think that they're going to be in a lower tax bracket when they get into retirement. You know, we've stopped our income stream, right? So obviously we're going to have less money, but we actually have to start drawing from our accounts. There's Social Security down the road. There's RMDs. True or false? Do we actually go into a lower tax bracket when we get into retirement?
You know what? That's a good question because sometimes the answer could be false more times than you think. So I think that's one of those myths. I think that was a good word that you used. 20, 30 years ago, everyone said go ahead and basically defer the taxes now. Don't pay taxes now because when you retire, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. And from our experience, what we see, that's not the case, especially for the people that were good savers. They socked a lot of money away in their IRAs, their 401ks, and then what happened was they lived underneath their means. So their IRAs got bigger and bigger and bigger. Almost imagine a snowball. Starts smaller and gets bigger and bigger with time. So what we're really finding out is later in life, I like to say it's almost like a roller coaster when it comes to taxes. When they're working, they're kind of in their highest tax years. They get their W-2, maybe a 1099. Temporarily, when they retire, they might go into a lower tax bracket. But what happens is when they get in their 70s and 80s and 90s, they go back up into a higher tax bracket again because of required minimum distributions, which we'll jump into here in a second. So I do think it's a myth. I think when you look at these ideas, you really have to make sure that you're taking the holistic approach at tax planning because I think tax software is good. It files your taxes for you, but we need to proactively throughout the year do effective tax planning so this tax liability doesn't really balloon over time.
John, on a monthly basis, do you think people spend less money in retirement, more, the same? Well, about where? Because, I mean, I think people are thinking that. So, well, I don't have to buy silly clothes for work anymore, and we don't have to commute. But you are now off 7 days a week, right? We still have expenditures in retirement.
Well, yeah, and just going back to what Stewart's talking about, I mean, so many people, I had someone in my office the other day from the show, called in. We were basically doing our full plan for them and going through their entire situation. And I think what was so interesting is they had already turned their Social Security on. They were taking distributions from their IRA. They did have a small pension because they were a government employee and had a small pension coming from that government pension. And what was interesting about it is their income was actually higher than it was when they were working. And just to Stu's point, that was when at the beginning of their retirement. As they creep farther and farther, as they go along farther and farther in retirement, the distribution from their IRA is required to continue to go up. That's the required minimum distribution. In the beginning, it's somewhere a little less than 4%, but as you go through time, as you get older and older and older, that percentage goes up and up and up. And so for them, one of the things that we were looking at as we were doing our Clear Path Retirement Guide was, as we go through time, they're actually going into a higher tax bracket. And so just like Stewart was talking about, if taxes are a roller coaster, really what we're trying to do when we look through it, and the only way you can do it is through a full plan. The only way you can see the pitfalls is by doing a complete plan. But you look at it and you say, okay, I know that we're going to be in a higher tax bracket later on. What can I be doing now? What can I be doing today to smooth out that roller coaster so that it's not something that catches us in retirement or catches us on down the road and we have a big tax bill that we weren't expecting. And so we'll be talking about that. I know Stewart's got some examples that we'll be talking about, how the solutions for that. What can we be doing now? How can we be planning now? Because do we think taxes are going to be going down in the future?
Well, that's what I was just about to add. I mean, really,
that's what I was going to ask.
Yes.
I mean, you just talked about the time bomb there. We've got these required minimum distributions. Those continue to go up. You've got to take those. We've got our regular living needs. We can throw in the kitchen sink of inflation if you want to. So obviously we're having to take in a little bit more. But then tax rates.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm. I mean, really, once you reach 72, which is the age of required minimum distributions as of a couple years ago now. So really, when we start looking at that, we're having to take more money from our retirement accounts. legislation might increase our taxes. So we're going to kind of get hit by two different sides of the equation. So really what we need to start looking at is how do we do effective long-term planning? And so that's really one of the number one questions we get right now, because what John was just saying, we're in the third lowest tax bracket we've been in the last 100 years. And so the biggest question we get, well, does it make sense to go ahead and pay the taxes now to get basically tax-free growth down the road, which is basically what a Roth conversion is. So required minimum distributions sounds pretty simple, but in fact, a lot of planning needs to go in place, because one, if you need it, great. That's what you spent it for. But two, if you don't need it, and you don't need this 4% almost each year, and by the way, that number gets to 7, 8, 9% plus as you get older and you approach your 85th birthday, 90th birthday. The number can be really, really large. And if that's combined with higher taxes, your highest tax years could be, and probably would be, later in your retirement years when you need the money the most.
How hard is it for you both to have that conversation with clients? Say, look, we've got to kind of bite this bullet. If we don't, it's going to get you down the road much further and much bigger, right? So I know it's not the conversation you want to have. You enjoy when you get to tell people you're able to retire. Here's what you get to spend every month. Here's how many vacations you can take. That's the fun stuff. This is the hard work, right? So how do you start that conversation?
Well, it goes back to the plan, and Spike, what a great problem to have, right? We've got too much money, we have too much income. Back to your question earlier that I don't think I answered very well. We've got some folks that are living and are spending more money in retirement than they did when they're working. We have some that are less, but I would say as comprehensive financial planners, every person's situation is different, and so we build a customized plan specifically to your individual situation. But going back to how do you prepare for that, or how do you do it? It's going back to the comprehensive financial plan that's personalized to you. When you go out there and you see, oh, that's my Social Security. Oh, that's my IRA. I can see it. It's on the screen. And you see that RMD, it's very clear when there's an issue. And just to Stewart's point, the traditional IRA, we've never paid taxes on that money, right? Your 401k, that you deferred the taxes on that money. None of that money has been taxed. So that's why you're having to pull it out, and you're being taxed on that whole amount. And so all we're doing with the traditional, or with the Roth conversion, is we're basically accelerating the taxes. We're basically saying, let's take a portion of this money, and everyone's different, everyone's plan's different, because we look at the tax bracket that you're in, we look at your Social Security, we look at your Medicare and the limits there, all to put together a plan to maximize the tax savings that you can get through doing a Roth conversion over the lifetime of your retirement plan. But it's really clear whenever you come into our offices and we're looking at it on the screen. It's very, very obvious when there's an issue. And yeah, it can be a hard conversation.
Yeah.
But when you look at how it can affect your overall retirement life, and when you know you're doing it for the right reasons, and it opens up tax-free income in retirement, well, then that's a fun conversation to have as well.
Right.
That's where we're really adding value to the overall situation.
Well, speaking of conversations, I know that you both will do a complimentary review. So you'll take into account taxes. I assume you'll take a look at other elements of their strategy, whether it's their investments, their risk, what exactly is their planning? Have they worked with another advisor? What exactly is the complimentary review that you'll do if folks reach out to the phone number on the screen here?
Yeah, for everyone who calls us today, we basically offer our complimentary Clear Path Retirement Guide, and this is a full comprehensive plan that looks at your IRAs, your tax situation not only now, but 5, 10, 15 years down the road. I think with the current changes, the current proposed changes in the future, this is something that you must basically evaluate on a year-by-year basis. I love my CPAs, but we really want to do some advanced tax planning a little bit more proactively. So for the first 10 callers today who call 844-333-6059, we'll schedule that meeting. We'll give you our Clear Path Retirement Guide and get you taken care of.
Make sure that you get your own Clear Path Retirement Guide. We do have to take a very quick break, but this Clear Path Retirement Guide is absolutely complimentary, but you have to call the number that you see here, 844-333-6059. More with Stewart and John right after this brief break.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to Retire with Clarity with the managing partners of OpenAir Advisers. I'm with Stewart Fields and John Lawton. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. We're talking about income and taxes. Taxes we do have to talk about for retirement planning. You said a phrase, though, and it stuck with me, income smoothing. I like that. First of all, I think you should copyright that. I think it was great. But what exactly do you mean by income smoothing?
Well, it was kind of like the roller coaster we were referring to. We don't want those highest tax years to be later in life. And so what happens is when you become 65, 70, you're fully retired, you need every nickel, you need every dollar. And so if we have more effective tax planning, we can save you 1%, 2%, 3% per year, which allows you to have more flexibility, more confidence, or just take less risk getting the same, performance. So having that income smoothing, not having that your highest tax years later in retirement is going to be really important. One way that we do this is through a thing called Roth Conversions, and this is probably the number one.
I'm hearing this all over the place. Roth Conversions, is it for everyone? So let's set the table for folks out there. We've been saving in our own 401ks, IRAs. We've been able to save that tax deferred for 20, 30, maybe even 40 years. And when we get to retirement, we got to pay the piper, right? We've got to pay our taxes. But this conversion allows us to move it into a Roth right now. But what's the hard part about it? What's the pill you got to swallow?
The pill you got to swallow is that you got to pay the taxes on that conversion. And so this is where comprehensive planning comes into play. Because I've seen it, and I think Stewart's seen it in our offices, where somebody either tries to do it themselves or gets some bad advice, and they'll do maybe too much of a conversion. And man, the risk to that is we paid an even higher tax. We shot through the tax brackets and we paid at a really high rate. Maybe it made your Medicare premiums much higher than you expected it. Maybe it made you pay taxes on your Social Security and you weren't expecting that to happen.
Oh, wow. All these other factors that it can affect.
And that's one of the things I would say is anytime we're changing something about your tax situation with your IRA or any of your retirement accounts, it affects everything. And so there's a lot of check marks or a lot of things that we look at. So if you're going to be looking at a Roth conversion, make sure you're working with a comprehensive financial planner. Anyways, basically what we're doing is, and a really good rule of thumb is, let's look at the tax brackets. Let's look at the tax brackets and look at your income, and let's just fill up whatever tax bracket you're in. So if you're in the 22% tax bracket, let's fill up that 22% tax bracket. If you're in the 24, let's fill up that 24% tax bracket. That's the amount of the conversion. So that you're going to get your income for the year. We're going to fill up that tax bracket, and that amount is what we're going to pay the taxes on. That money then goes into a Roth. Once it's in the Roth, it's not taxed again. You grows tax deferred, and when the money comes out, it's tax free. A couple of things to that to maximize those the tax savings when we're doing that. Just a couple of things. If you can pay the money from a non-qualified account, don't use your IRA to pay the taxes. Right? If you have another account sitting out here, that's the one that we want to use to pay those taxes. That will maximize the benefit. If you have to use your IRA, it still makes sense some of the time. Also, if we're looking at the market, and man, it's been a volatile year this year already.
It's been volatile, yeah.
So if we can choose a time whenever the market's down to do that Roth conversion, let's go ahead and do that during that time. We're not trying to time the market, but if we have,
I hear you.
We're not market timers here. But if the market is down, that's a great time to do the Roth conversion while it's down, and let's convert our most aggressive assets. because when the market comes back again, those are the ones that are going to take off first. Our Roth money, usually when we're managing our portfolios, is our most aggressive money because we want that to grow. It's our last money to take. And again, that money goes tax-free to our beneficiaries there as well. So lots of really great benefits for doing this. Again, it smooths out the income over your lifetime.
RMD on a Roth?
No RMDs on a Roth.
Yeah, so that was what you were talking about, that avalanche before, and that when we've got to start taking those RMDs. So this is obviously something we want to start doing hopefully before 72. Is it, is this an immediate need? Because we've been hearing some things about what's going on in Congress and possibly getting rid of the conversion. What do you hold to that?
Yeah, so most of the time, the more time that you have after the conversion, because it's growing tax-free, the more benefits it's going to be. So kind of going back to step one, we have to determine who should do a Roth conversion. Okay. And so this is something that say, all right, I hear the benefits from them, but I don't know it's for me. And I love math, and it really is a mathematical game that we're trying to figure out. So I want to show you an example of basically when you work with us, basically one of the processes that we'll take you through, and basically the first thing that we're going to look at is basically your income. And so if you kind of look at this graph that we're showing, as we see different colors of the bars, and we see this orange line that kind of goes across the bars. This represents how much income this person needs. So this person needs about $60,000 of income per year. So we said, great, well, you need about $60,000. Let's now look at where's that income actually coming from to help you get to that $60,000. So you'll see that light blue area at the bottom, that represents their Social Security amount. So that helps them get to that $60,000 total, but not all the way. The yellow bar between the green and the blue, this is actually their pension. They don't have it. This client didn't have a big pension. They were receiving about $10,000 per year. So they had a gap. They needed just a little bit more money from the portfolios to get them to the money that they need. However, this green actually represents the RMD. So this is a nice, easily visually graph to look at for you to find out, is a Roth conversion well for you? And if you see how far the green is above the orange, that basically means you're receiving all that amount of income that you have to take, hence required minimum distributions. You have to pay taxes on all the unneeded income. So when I look at this is the first thing I say is, oh my goodness, your income far exceeds what you actually need. This kind of sounds the alarm bell. Like, we must now start looking at Roth conversions. So that's what we really want to do. It doesn't mean, that's not the only reason why you should do a Roth conversion. Like, you could basically have below the orange line and still need to do a Roth conversion, but that's a telltale sign of a Roth conversion is going to make sense because you're paying way too much taxes on unneeded income.
And what a wonderful problem to have, right? But do you find the kind of a balance, somewhere in between? We're like, hey, this might be a good step, even just getting the growth alone, being able to take that out tax-free. That's got to be a great benefit for 5 or maybe 10 years, just doing that alone.
Well, like I said, I mentioned earlier, the people that saved well and lived below their means, well, that's why that green was so big, because their IRAs had grown to $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, and they say, well, I don't need another, let's say the 4% rule, $32,000 is the RMD. That puts me well over that $60,000 figure. So again, the bigger your IRAs, probably the most beneficial it is at this point in time. So people say, well, when should I get started? Well, taxes will change. We know that for sure. But when will they change? Well, it could be this year, next year, we don't know. But for sure, if there is no changes, when we wake up January 1st, 2026, the current tax cut deal expires and we go back to previous tax brackets, which, some people could have 3 or 4% more in taxes. But if you're kind of in a middle ground, your taxes could go up 12, 13%, depending on which bracket that you're really in when we revert back to old tax brackets.
Well, and I know a lot of people are listening to the great information that you're giving here on taxes, but they probably don't want to do it alone. You've got a review and a process that you'll do complimentary for the listeners of the program here. What exactly is that? Yeah,
so basically for everyone who comes in, we will, looking at that graph, we'll do a full income plan. Where's your income coming from? How much do you need? Is it tax friendly, or will you pay a lot of money on those taxes? So this is a report that's extremely valuable. It's very comprehensive, and it's something that I would definitely take us up on. So for the first 10 callers who call us today, call 844-333-6059 for your Clear Path Retirement Guide.
make sure that you do get your complimentary Clear Path Retirement Guide. All you have to do is reach out to us here, 844-333-6059. More with John and Stewart when we get back right after this very brief break.
At OpenAir Advisors, we are passionate about making sure our clients live stress-free in retirement. When meeting with new clients, our biggest fear is whether it's too late to fix other advisors' mistakes. When you're nearing retirement, it's essential that you have a written plan and know exactly how that plan will work for you in retirement. Many consumers place loyalty to their current advisors over the retirement success. Always get a second opinion. For a complimentary review, contact us today.
We are frequently asked where we think tax rates are headed. Most experts agree tax rates will eventually have to go up as our federal debt increases. Without any changes, the government's current plan is set to expire in 2025. Every penny counts, especially in retirement. Is your current plan efficient and optimized to reduce your tax obligations? Contact us today at OpenAir Advisers for a complimentary review.
Welcome back to Retire with Clarity. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. John, Stewart, we're going through some great tax information today. You know what? One of the other aspects that I really like that you both do with your planning is also talking about charitable giving and how you can help set that up. You really cover all facets of retirement planning. What is it that you want to talk about with the charitable giving? Is this something that you can help people path?
You know, I think it's really interesting. It's something called a qualified charitable distribution. But we have folks coming in every single day, and I've got some folks that, you know, they tithe every Sunday, right, Spike?
Yeah.
They go to church, they tithe every Sunday, and still have to take the required minimum distribution. And with a qualified charitable distribution, if we just change the way they're giving that money to the charity or to the church in this example, we can make that entire required minimum distribution tax-free. And the difference is just talking to someone who works in this field, right?
Yeah.
Someone, not just we'll call him the big box broker, if we can here.
Yeah.
The big box broker that, you know, you gave him your money, he put you in some mutual funds and things are going. If you're not seeing a financial plan, they may not work in this field. They may not know about these types of benefits that they could get. And that's money that you're paying that you didn't need to. And it's a simple fix. It's one of those things that when we do a financial plan, that's part of the experience coming into OpenAir Advisors. Whether you're sitting in my office, Stu's office, Chris, our other partner, when you come into our offices and we sit down and we talk to you and learn about your current situation, what's important to you. If giving to charity is important to you, just changing the way that we implement that giving and involving your financial planner in that giving can create a lot of really great tax savings. But it doesn't stop there. So a qualified charitable distribution is one way that we do it, but we also work with charities. And so there are things like donor advised funds where you control how you're giving to charity and how you control those funds after you've given the money away. So some of us like to control the money after it's gone, or we want to make sure that the charity's using it the right way.
And this possibly, you were talking about putting it in different maybe kinds of trusts or functions and somebody else being in charge of it?
Well, he was talking about the big box, firms. And the reason why you kind of lack the financial planning with those guys, for the most part, is because customized planning takes time. It takes resources. And most of those firms are built for scale. So we're looking about QCDs or qualified charitable donations or advisor donor funds. This is not something the computer says, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you need to go do this. It's going to be the time of the advisor to go through there, to look at their situation, to find out what is the benefits of doing this. And when it's done correctly, they're saving money in taxes. That's putting more money in their pocket. That's allowing them to spend more money, give more money to the kids.
Or give it to the kids or to their community, as you're saying. Yeah.
So it's really important to take that kind of deep dive into basically what were we talking about? I don't even know if you mentioned it's RMDs. So it's the RMD that they're basically sending to the church. There's several states. There's over 30 states in the country where you can give straight to endowments, scholarships, and you can see it. Maybe your son even goes to school there, and you can see instant gratification. So that's definitely something that we look into for clients who live in Texas or Georgia or all over the country. Is we can look at those types of things to see how can we save them money fulfilling the wishes that they want to do.
And this is exactly what you were talking about and saying when you've got to take those required minimum distributions and you're lucky enough not to need the money, what else can you do with it? Give it off to the charity. You can set it up as your own tax free assistance on there. What a great thing to do, but you probably need help doing this. So that's what I wanted to ask is that I know that you're not tax accountants yourself, but you both seem incredibly well versed in all of this. How do you work with the tax person?
Well, and that's one of the things. First off, we are both certified financial planners, and that doesn't. We don't do tax preparation, but we do work with a lot of CPAs, and we work with our clients' own CPAs. And if you don't have one, and you think that you might need one, I'll give you the recommendation. We've got people in our offices that do. Maybe they don't work for the firm, but they work very, very closely with us that we can refer you to.
Makes it easy to share information. When we have a good relationship with the CPA, how we're doing, they know how we plan. They know how, and we actually teach the CPAs a lot of things. They're like, oh, I didn't really realize that because they're in tax preparation mode. They're trying to grade that test from the previous year. So John's right. We spend a lot of time.
And those are two very different concepts, right? There's tax preparing for this year, getting it done, but then there's tax planning for down in the future. And that's what you guys have been talking about, right?
That's exactly right. It's funny. Earlier this week, we had someone in my office who I've worked with for a lot of years. He was an HP executive and had a lot of HP stock. Been saving up this HP stock for 30 years. And so, a lot of it, the cost basis was very, very low. This was in just a taxable account. It wasn't in it. We've been talking a lot about Roth and IRA. This is just an account. And so it was highly appreciated. That's a great resource for him to donate that individual stock where he gets the benefit of donating at the price that it is today, but he only pays taxes on that low basis that he bought the stock for whenever he purchased it 30 years ago.
I can tell you both could fill an entire another show with tax information. Unfortunately, we do have to close it down right now. But I understand for the callers, for those who call into the television program here, that you do have an offer that is absolutely complimentary. We only have about 30 seconds, but what exactly is that?
Yeah, if you're listening to us today and you're on listening to us on the TV today, for the first 10 callers, if you're thinking, would a Roth conversion work for me? Would I like to get that plan? Give us a call today and let us put together that Clear Path Retirement Guide. It's a comprehensive plan, customized to your own individual situation. We'd love to put that together for you. Give us a call today and let us get to work for you.
Thank you so much for watching Retire with Clarity.